Welcome back to Project Marsha. As you can see, we've made a lot of progress on the car since we've last showed you the whole car. I've got everything in fill primer now. It's ready for block sanding, and that's what we're going to get at today. It's a hot and humid day here in North Carolina, but this work's got to get done. We're coming up fast on the Holly Mo Party show, which we really want to have Project Marsha be at in attendance. So we're going to go through just briefly the block sanding steps again that we're going to use to get Marsha nice and straight. Again, this is not going to be a show car, but we want it to be a real good representative that you wouldn't be ashamed to take to a cruise in, take to a small car show, and just have fun with and show up at your local ice cream joint with. So I'm going to get out my sandpapers, my blocks, and we're going to get our new dry guide coat that we're going to use for the first time on primer, and we're going to see how that works. Alright, as you can see, I've got my assortment of sanding blocks here that I'll need to do this car, and I've brought out the big one. I don't use this block very often, but on a car like this with such long panels as we have on the quarters, we want to have as much flat surface area as we can get, and with this block I get about almost 3 feet of sanding so that I can make sure my fenders are nice and smooth and flat. And the quarter panels the same way. I may use this on the fenders, I'll probably use mainly this one, but I've got my round so that I can get in my curved areas here on the tops of the fenders nice, my shorter flat block, and a square block. This is good for down in these areas here on the bottom. It really works nice there. So we're going to be using an assortment of those. I'm going to start out with a 120 grit paper. This paper I got offline. I'm not crazy about it. I'm probably going to burn through most of this pretty quick. So I don't know how much sanding I'll get done today. But spend the money on paper. Don't cheap out on a paper, as I found out with this paper. It clogs up really quick. So spend a little bit extra money, get a better paper. It doesn't clog as much. You get a little bit more life out of it. My guide coat, I've switched to this dry style of guide coat. Again, because mainly the spray on, I was having a lot of problems with it clogging up the paper real quick. So we're going to give this a shot, and the way this is applied, you just kind of shake it onto the applicator, and you just run it along your fender, or your surface that you need to sand, and get it covered. And it basically does the same job that the spray on does, only this is already dry, so we're not getting that. Hopefully we will not have the problem of it clogging up the paper. Alright, so after you get your surfaces covered, we'll start out with this block here. Put our paper on. And again, you want to go at a soft pattern. Keeping your block flat to the surface. Okay, as we're sanding, again, as you seen in some of my other videos on this process, we're looking for areas where this guide coat is not being sanded off. So that's going to show us our low spots. And a lot of this here you see, this will come down and will disappear. There's a lot of primer on here. This is pretty heavy coats of primer, so you have got a lot to work with. When you see you're going through, when you've got areas here where everything is your guide coat is gone, and you start to see your under primer, your epoxy primer showing through, that's your time to stop. If you've still got some low spots, those are the areas that will need just a little bit of fill, polyester filler, to bring them back up. Just a very thin coat will bring them back up and make all these areas the same level, so you get a nice straight flat panel. Now most of this stuff will, again, like I said, it will sand out with the primer because there is a lot of material here to work with. So as we keep going here, you'll see most of that disappear. And again too, with this car, really slight areas of low spots, we may not worry too much about them. We are going to do one more coat of primer on this car, which could possibly fill them. But again, this isn't a show car. It's not got to be so laser straight that it can compete for the grade 8. So we just want the car to look nice. When it shows up at the Dairy Queen on a Saturday night, you're proud to bring this car out. Alright, I've about got most of this fender sanded down, and it's pretty good. There's a real slight low spot here that with another coat of primer on it will probably fill in. Again, if this was going to be a show car, we'd put a little skim coat in here and get this a little bit flatter, but I think with another coat of primer or two on this and the final sanding, it will sand out close enough for what we're doing with this project. Now you'll see these dark spots here around our trim holes, and that's typical where you've got trim on a car. You got push-in trim. It's going to push the metal when you're pushing that trim on, and it just puts a little low spot in it. Again, not a show car. We're not going to worry about these because once the trim's on, you're not going to see those spots. So we're going to keep going with this. I've got the top to do yet and the front. Now down here in the front, let me show you a little spot here. There is a spot right here. It's got a little low spot. There was a little dent here. So I'm going to mix up a little bit of filler and fill this and reshape this and get this body line here nice and straight, so that when we do our final sand, that'll come out and look really nice and you won't be able to tell there was ever a dent there. Well, I've been working my way down the car, got the fender and the door done. I'm moving on to the quarter panel, so I'm going to get out my supersized longboard so I can get this quarter panel nice and flat. See, it covers a long area, making sure you've got to use 2 hands on this one so that you can get everything nice and evenly sanded. Again, making sure we can find any low spots that need a little bit more attention and take care of them before we do our final prime. A few areas that look like they're popping up here. It's a little low here, here. We'll see how they sand out. Alright, it's the following week. And I've got the rest of the car block sanded, and not too bad. This side had a few areas that needed a little bit of help. Not much, just a little bit here and here, some in here. But all in all, it was pretty good. So we fixed all those spots and got that sanded. Now I just have to go back over and spot prime those areas, reblock them, make sure everything's nice and flat, and it'll be ready for its final primer coat. Alright, it's a few days later. I've got Marsha back inside the shop. It's blazing hot here, just like it is everywhere else. But what we're looking at is our areas that need further attention. So the quarter panel is probably the worst. The door is actually pretty good. Got one little spot there. The fender's not too bad. I got a few spots up here. These are actually very, very slight. Probably another coat of primer and they'd fill. But there's a couple that need just a little bit of filler in them. This one here. Little area here. But for the most part, it's the quarter panel. Now this quarter panel had some dents in it prior, and then we did our work on it at the bottom. Actually, where we did the work at on the bottoms is really nice. But we got a low area here. We've got another low area right here, and another low area here. These I can actually kind of feel. So we're going to go ahead and mix up some polyester putty so we can get these taken care of. Now you see down here, I actually went through the primer all the way into the body filler that I applied here. So this was too high, this is what this process is for. It's finding your highs and lows. So I sanded this and got this back lower where it needs to be. We got a low spot here that we'll take care of, and another low spot back here. Again, it's kind of difficult when you're working the panel itself, just to see where your slight low areas are. So we're going to go ahead and set the tripod up, and we're going to go ahead and get these filled in and get them sanded out. Alright, so the first thing we want to do before we fix our low spots is I always go and I circle the area that needs attention. And I'll show you why in a minute. But we're going to go ahead and just circle everywhere that we're going to want to put some filler in. And again, these spots here where the trim go on, I'm not worrying about, because once the trim's on, it's just going to push the panel back in again anyhow, so there's no sense in putting anything in there. I think that's it for this quarter panel. So the next thing we want to do, take some of your rougher paper. This is a 120 grit. This is what I was using to do my initial block sanding with. And you're just going to, where the low spot is, you're going to give it a scratch. Just give it a sand. Trying to get that guide coat off of there. You want to put sand marks into that area so that it gives your filler something to bite into. If you just put filler over top of this panel, it may hold for a little while, but chances are it'll be a weak area and it could delaminate from the panel. And that's the last thing you want to have happen after you've got your car painted. A couple years down the road is have that filler fail. So we want to have the, oh, I missed a spot right here. We want to try and get the filler to last as long as it can on the car. Now as we sand this, you can see my reasoning for circling the area, because once you sand that guide coat off, you kind of lose where those spots are at. If you look, you can try and look really hard and see the difference in your sand marks, but if you've got it circled out, it just makes it easier to find it, especially when it's hot and you're trying to apply this polyester filler. You don't have a lot of time to work with it. It sets up extremely fast when it's as hot as it is out right now. So you need to be able to find your areas that need attention, get the filler on them, get it spread before it starts to harden up on your mixing pad. And then you're just wasting money. Alright, so I'm going to mix up some of this polyester putty. I've already done some on the back. Again, you can see small amount is all that is needed with temperatures as hot as they are. Now in the wintertime, of course, then you need more in order to get it to set up. But that'll be plenty. This polyester putty will be starting to set up and become unspreadable within about 5 minutes. So you got to move fast. You got to know where you need to lay your putty at. This is again why I go ahead and circle everything. So again, we're just thin coats. Again, it's going to vary depending on what you got going on, which you have to kind of feel for. But just thin coats here. You don't want to have to do a whole lot of sanding on this. Get this putty back off where it's not needed. So that's how you go about finding and fixing your low areas that you've got some issues with. I got a little spot right there I missed. As you keep looking around, you find some more things. Little spots here and there that need attention. You'll find more as you keep going along. So we're going to let this set up now overnight tonight. I'm not going to, it's too hot to be down here right now sanding this stuff. So I'm going to let this set up overnight. Tomorrow we'll come back in and we'll go over these with some 120, get them feathered down, and then we'll have to apply some primer over top of these areas again, and then give it another block sand, make sure that we've got everything fixed and that our panel is as straight as we can get it. Again, it doesn't have to be show quality straight, but we don't want somebody to come up and start doing this down the side of the car looking at things. We want it to be a very presentable car. So that's what we're shooting for. Alright, so I've got all my spots sanded down. Everything looks better, feels better. These areas here that I could feel before, nice flat now. I got one spot here on this top, right in here, that's a little bit low still. So I'm going to mix up just a little bit more putty. Go ahead and fill that, resand this, and then this will be ready for some primer to be added back to it again, so we can go ahead and block it, check it, and make sure it's better. Okay, I've gone back and I've spot primed everywhere. As you can see, a little bit darker primer here on the car where we had done our repairs at. Along the quarter, top of the fender. Nothing needed to be done on the hood. A few spots along this side of the car too. So that leaves one more blocking on those areas to get them knocked back down and smooth, and just to make sure that they don't need any more work done to them. And then we'll go ahead and get the car ready for its final prime. Alright, so we've gone through our reblocking process of all our repaired low areas that we found on our initial blocking. And then I went over the entire car with a 220 grit just to try and lessen the sand scratches from the 120. And as you can see, there's a lot of small bare areas. So we're ready for a final prime here on Project Marsha. And we're going to go ahead and mix up some epoxy primer, and we're going to hit all these bare areas just to give it some good adhesion. And then we're going to give the car 2 coats of a 2K high build surface primer that will leave us a uniform colored surface that will sand out after that with a 400 grit on the DA. And we can do it with the DA because at this point we know the car is flat, it's straight. We've blocked everything twice, so we know we're good there. We just need to knock down that primer coat to fill in the sand scratches and give us a nice smooth surface to apply our B3 ice blue poly color. So we're going to get to it. I'm not going to go through and show you the process of priming. I've done that plenty of times. If you need to watch me prime a car, you can go back through my video library and you can see me priming some cars. I'll bring you back and show you the car once it's got its full primer coat on and we're ready for sanding. Well, here we have it. Project Marsha's got her final coat of primer done. Next step is to go ahead and start jamming in the doors and the trunk and the underside of the hood and other small pieces we have. Now the reason I go ahead and do my final primer coat and then start jamming is because any overspray that gets on top of this coat of primer will get sanded off in the final sanding process. So this is going to be the end of this video. We'll start with a new video showing the jamming, and we'll move into the final sand and the final paint on Project Marsha and getting all the other little parts and pieces tied together and finished up so we can get this car put together in time to be the Mo Party on September 13th through the 15th, coming up very shortly here. So I got to get moving. Thanks again for watching. Hope you enjoyed this, and we'll see you again soon.